Everyone knows how Goliath dies. A shepherd kid, one stone, and the giant hits the dirt. But almost nobody knows Goliath had brothers. 4 more giants, same bloodline, same city. And one of them nearly killed David years later, when the king was old and tired. So where does a whole family of giants come from? The answer is 3 Hebrew words in Genesis that almost every Bible quietly skips. The first one is Nephilim, pull on it, and the giant story stops being a fairy tale. It starts looking like a case file, so let's open it. Genesis chapter 6. We are still in the ancient world's deep past before the flood, when the text says something genuinely strange. It says the Bene Ha-Elohim, the sons of God, saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives for themselves from among them. And then comes the line. In those days, the text says, there were Nephilim on the earth, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the Gibberim, the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Now, slow down, because 3 words there are doing more work than any sermon you have ever heard on this passage. The first word is Nephilim. You have heard it. It has been on every documentary thumbnail and every conspiracy forum for decades. But in Hebrew, it is not a mysterious alien name. It comes from the root naphal, which means to fall. Nephilim, most simply, means the fallen ones. Sit with how strange that is for a second. The most feared figures in the ancient imagination, the giants, the heroes, and the word the Bible reaches for to name them is not the mighty ones or the tall ones. It is the ones who fell. That is not an accident, and we are going to watch that word pay off in a way that will give you chills by the end of this video. There is a second possibility worth putting on the table too, because good detectives do not hide the other suspects. Some scholars connect Nephilim to an Aramaic word, Nephilah, that simply meant a giant. And when ancient Jewish translators rendered the Hebrew Bible into Greek centuries before Jesus, they did not transliterate the word at all. They translated it. They wrote gigantes, giants. So the oldest translation, we have already read this as a story about giant beings. Hold that thought. The second word is Bene Ha-Elohim, the sons of God. And this is the part where you have to resist the urge to let someone hand you the answer too fast, because there are 3 serious readings, and the Bible itself does not stop to settle the argument. Reading 1 is the oldest and the most unsettling. The sons of God are divine beings, spiritual entities. In this view, something crossed a line it was never supposed to cross, and the Nephilim were the result. This is what the Greek translators leaned toward, and it is what a lot of very ancient Jewish writing assumed without blinking. Reading 2 is gentler. The sons of God are the godly line of Seth, Adam's faithful descendants, and the daughters of men are the corrupt line of Cain. In this view, the sin is not biology. It is the holy line marrying into the corrupt one until there is nothing holy left. Reading 3 is political. In the ancient world, kings and rulers called themselves sons of the gods all the time. So the sons of God might be power-drunk dynasties, warlords, taking whatever women they wanted by force and breeding a warrior class. Here is what I want you to notice. You do not have to pick one tonight, because all 3 readings agree on the same disturbing result. Some boundary that was supposed to hold did not, and what came through that broken boundary was the third word. Gibberim, the mighty men. And the text adds a phrase that is going to become the secret spine of this entire story. It calls them Anshe Ha-Shem. In English, that gets softened to men of renown or men of fame, but Shem in Hebrew just means name. So the most literal reading is this: they were the men of the name, the famous ones, the ones who made themselves into a name that would not be forgotten. Tuck that away. Men who exist to make a name, because in just a few chapters you are going to hear humanity say it out loud at the Tower of Babel. Let us build a tower, they say, and make a name for ourselves. The same word, Shem. The giants and the tower builders are reaching for the exact same thing, a name big enough to outlive them. And now we get to the clue, the one almost everyone reads straight past. The text says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. In Hebrew, Vegam Acharei Ken, and also afterward. Think about that for a second. The whole point of the story that follows in Genesis is a flood that wipes the slate clean. And yet, right here, before the flood even happens, the narrator slips in a phrase that says the Nephilim were around then and afterward, as if the writer already knows you are going to ask the obvious question. If the flood ended everything, why does the Bible keep finding giants in the land for the next 1,000 years? That little phrase is the thread, and for the rest of this video, we are going to pull on it, slowly, and watch where it leads. It leads straight to a valley, and to a giant from the city of Gath, and to 4 more giants nobody ever talks about. So before we go any further, let's pause, because this first piece already lands somewhere personal if you let it. What does this mean for you right now? Here is what I keep coming back to. The thing about giants in this story is that they are never really about height. From the very first mention, the Bible ties them to a hunger, the hunger to make a name, to matter, to not be forgotten. That hunger is not ancient. You felt a version of it today, the quiet fear that you could work your whole life and still vanish without a trace, that you have to make yourself into something big by force or you will be nothing. The Nephilim are, in a strange way, that fear given a body, and the Bible is about to spend 1,000 years showing you what that hunger actually does to the people who build their lives on it. Keep that in the back of your mind. We are going to need it. Before we jump 1,000 years, I owe you the reading I rushed past. The first one, the divine beings. Because the ancient world did not treat that as one option among 3. For centuries, it was simply the story. And there is a reason. Stay in Genesis for a moment. Just 4 chapters later. The text introduces a man named Nimrod, and it uses a word you have already met. It says Nimrod was the first gibber on the earth, the first mighty man. The exact word used for the offspring of the Nephilim. A mighty hunter, the text says, before the Lord. And then it tells you what Nimrod built. The beginning of his kingdom, it says, was Babel. The same Babel where, 1 chapter later, humanity gathers and says the line we have been tracking. Come, let us build a city and a tower, and let us make a name for ourselves. Nimrod, the first mighty man, founds the city where humanity tries to seize a name by force. The giants and the tower are not 2 different stories. They are the same impulse, wearing 2 different costumes, sitting right next to each other in the same book. But the divine being's reading goes further than Genesis lets on, because of a document that is not in your Bible. And this is the part the whole Nephilim rabbit hole is really built on, so let me give it to you straight. There is an ancient Jewish text called the Book of Enoch. It is not in the Hebrew Bible. It is not in the Catholic or Protestant canon. Only one church on earth, the Ethiopian Orthodox, ever treated it as scripture. But here is what makes it impossible to ignore. It is old. Fragments of it in Aramaic were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which means it was sitting in libraries in Israel in the centuries around the time of Jesus. People in the New Testament world knew it, and the Book of Enoch takes those 2 quiet verses in Genesis 6 and blows them wide open. In Enoch, the sons of God have a name. They are called the Watchers. 200 of them, the text says, came down from heaven in the days of an ancestor named Jared, and they descended on the peak of a mountain you can still visit today, Mount Hermon, on the northern edge of Israel. They swore an oath to each other up there to go through with it. They took human wives, and one of them, named Azazel, taught humanity how to forge swords and knives and armor, and how to make cosmetics and jewelry. Read that list again. Weapons and vanity. The 2 oldest ways human beings try to make themselves dangerous and make themselves seen. And the children of these watchers were the giants. And then Enoch tells you the thing that ties this entire video together. When the giants die, their bodies fall, but their spirits do not. Their spirits, Enoch says, stay on the earth, and they become the evil spirits, the unclean spirits that wander and torment the living. And remember where the Hebrew Bible is about to take us. The word Rephaim, the giants, also means the dead. Here is an ancient text claiming the spirits of the dead giants never actually left. The giant becomes a ghost that stays. Now, I am not telling you to believe the Book of Enoch. It is not scripture, and plenty of careful readers think it is exactly the kind of legend the Bible's own giant story is quietly arguing against. But you cannot understand why the ancient world read Genesis 6 the way it did without knowing this book existed. And here is the detail that makes people sit up. The New Testament book of Jude, near the very end of the Bible, actually quotes the Book of Enoch by name and warns about the angels who abandoned their proper place. The reading you might assume is fringe was, in the world that produced your Bible, the mainstream. What does this mean for you, right now? Forget for a second whether you think the watchers were literal. Look at what the oldest version of this story says the fall actually was. It was knowledge handed to people who were not ready for it, and the first thing they did with it was make weapons and chase a name. That is not an ancient problem. We are the first generation in history handed power on this scale through a screen. The ability to be seen by millions, the ability to do real harm from a couch, with no wisdom required to unlock any of it. The Watcher's story is asking the same question your phone asks you every morning. What happens when the power to do real damage and the power to be seen arrives long before the character to handle it? The giants were what came out of that gap the first time. Keep that question open, because the rest of the case keeps answering it. Now jump forward. Past the flood, past Abraham, past slavery in Egypt, past a sea splitting open. We are standing at the edge of the land Israel has been promised, and Moses sends 12 men in to scout it. 12 spies, 40 days of recon, and when they come back, 10 of them are pale. They have seen something in that land. And the report they give is in the Book of Numbers, chapter 13, and it is one of the most psychologically honest moments in the entire Bible. They say the people of the land are strong, and the cities are huge and fortified. Fine. Armies expect that. But then they drop the line that breaks the whole camp. We saw the Nephilim there, they say. The sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. There it is again, that word. The same word from before the flood, and also afterward. Remember, the narrator told you they would still be here. And now, 1,000 years later, here they are, walking around the hill country of Canaan. And the spies give them a new family name, the Anakim, the sons of Anak. That name is worth a second. Anak in Hebrew is tied by a lot of readers to the word for neck, Anak, the same root as a necklace, the thing you wear around your neck. So the Anakim may have been remembered as the long-necked ones, the ones who literally looked down on you. We are not certain of the etymology, and I am not going to pretend we are, but the picture the spies paint is unmistakable. These are not just tall men, these are men who make you feel small just by standing there. And then comes the sentence that is the real point of the whole story. The spies say, "We seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." The Hebrew word is chagavim, grasshoppers, locusts, the little things you step on without thinking. And I want you to catch the exact wording, because it is surgical. They do not say the giants told us we were grasshoppers. They do not say we measured ourselves and we really were grasshoppers. They say we seemed like grasshoppers to ourselves. And so, they assume we must have seemed that way to them too. That sentence is the hinge. The giant did not shrink them. Their own image of themselves shrank. And then they projected that shrunken image into the giant's eyes and assumed the giant agreed. They lost the war inside their own heads before a single sword came out. Now here is the detective's note, the one that is going to matter later. Pay attention to where these giants are. The spies meet them in the hill country, near a place called Hebron, in the cities of the south of Canaan. The giants are not scattered evenly across the world. They cluster in specific places. File that away, because that pattern is the breadcrumb trail that leads us eventually straight to Goliath's hometown. Because not everyone in that scouting party saw grasshoppers. 2 men, Joshua and a man named Caleb, came back from the exact same land, saw the exact same giants, and filed a completely different report. "We are well able to take it," Caleb says. "Same giants, same walls, same long-necked men looking down at them. And one group came home defeated, and the other came home ready." They did not disagree about the size of the giants. They disagreed about the size of themselves. Here is where this gets personal, because this is exactly the kind of thing this channel exists for. What does this mean for you right now? The grasshopper problem is not a giant problem. It is a mirror problem. The 10 spies were not wrong that the giants were big. They were wrong that they themselves were nothing. And most of the things looming over your life right now, the thing at work you are convinced you cannot do, the family pattern you assume is just who you are, the dream you talked yourself out of years ago, most of those did not actually beat you. You looked at them, then you looked at yourself, and you decided in advance how the story ends. The giant never had to lift a finger. You handed it the win in the mirror. Hold on to Caleb. Same land, same monsters, different read on himself. We will see what that read is worth when a teenager picks it back up in a valley a few centuries from now. Keep pulling the thread. We move from Numbers into Deuteronomy, and here the Bible does something no fairy tale would ever bother to do. It gives you a census of the giants, tribe by tribe, region by region, like it is keeping records. In Deuteronomy 2 and 3, Moses is reviewing the journey, and he keeps pausing to add these almost archaeological footnotes about who used to live in each piece of land. And the picture that emerges is of an ancient world that was, for a long time, full of giant clans, each region with its own name for them. There were the Emim, he says, a people great and many and tall as the Anakim. There were the Zamzumim, whom the Ammonites had their own name for. And the text keeps tying them all back to one umbrella term. It calls them the Rephaim. Hold that word, Rephaim. We are coming back to it, and when we do, it is going to flip this entire story on its head. But first, the Bible hands us its single most concrete piece of physical evidence, its Exhibit A, and it is one of the strangest verses in the Hebrew Bible. There was a king named Og, who ruled a region called Bashan, the rugged volcanic highlands east of the Jordan, a land of black basalt rock and oak forests. And the text says Og was the last remnant of the Rephaim, the final survivor of the giant clans in that region. And then Moses says something that sounds like a museum curator pointing at a display case. His bed, the text says, was a bed of iron. Is it not in Rabbah of the Ammonites? 9 cubits its length and 4 cubits its width by the common cubit. Stop and feel what just happened. The narrator interrupts his own story to give you the dimensions of an artifact and to tell you where you can go see it. 9 cubits by 4 cubits. By the standard ancient cubit, that is roughly 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide. A bed the size of a small room. And the text basically says, do not take my word for it. It is on display in Rabbah. Go look. Now, good detectives stay honest. Some scholars think the Hebrew word here, eres, might not mean a sleeping bed at all, but a sarcophagus, a burial coffin, possibly of black basalt, which the ancients sometimes called iron because of its dark, metallic look. Either way, the point of the verse does not change. The writer is pointing at a massive object in a real place as proof that the giant clans were not a legend. They left furniture. Notice what the writer is doing here. The Bible could have just said, there were giants. Instead, it gives you a location, a measurement, and a relic. That is not how myths talk. That is how a case file talks. And there is one more piece of evidence here, and it does not come from the Bible at all. It comes from Israel's neighbors. Because the land Og ruled, Bashan, with its 2 royal cities of Ashtaroth and Edrei, shows up in texts written by the people who lived next door, the Canaanites of a coastal city called Ugarit. Archaeologists pulled clay tablets out of that city, written centuries before the time of the kings of Israel. And in those tablets there is a word that should stop you cold. The Ugaritic writers had their own version of the word Rephaim. They spelled it Rapiuma. And in their world, the Rapiuma were not living giants. They were the spirits of dead kings, deified ancestors. The mighty dead, summoned back in ritual. So look at what we have. The same region, Bashan, the same family of words, Rephaim, and 2 cultures, side by side, using it for 2 things at once. Israel uses it for a line of living giants. Their neighbors use it for the royal dead. And Bashan itself, that black volcanic highland sitting right under Mount Hermon, the same Mount Hermon where the Book of Enoch said the Watchers came down, was remembered across the ancient Near East as a kind of doorway to the realm of the dead. The geography of the giants and the geography of the underworld are the same geography. The whole region is haunted in the literature by giants and by the dead, and the two keep turning out to be the same thing. This is what I love about this case. The Bible is not making this connection in a vacuum and hoping you take its word for it. The dirt agrees, the neighbors' libraries agree. Everyone in that ancient world, reading their own scrolls in their own language, kept landing on the same eerie overlap. The mightiest beings and the deadest dead share a name and share a place. And the Hebrew Bible is about to take that overlap and aim it straight at your heart. So we now have a giant bloodline that the text tracks before the flood, and after it, through named clans, with a physical artifact on display. The thread is taut. And now I have to show you the twist hiding inside that word Rephaim, because it is the single most haunting thing in this whole study. The word Rephaim, in most of these verses, means the giant peoples, the Rephaim of Bashan, the Rephaim that the Ammonites called Zamzumim, giants. But that exact same word, Rephaim, shows up in a completely different set of passages, in Isaiah, in the Psalms, in Proverbs. And in those passages, it does not mean giants at all. It means the dead, the shades, the powerless ghosts in Sheol, the realm of the dead. When Isaiah taunts a fallen tyrant and says the Rephaim rise to greet him as he comes down to the grave, he is not talking about giants. He is talking about the dead, the departed, the forgotten. Read those two meanings side by side, because the Bible is doing something almost too clever to be accidental. The same word that names the mightiest, most feared beings on earth, the men of the name, also names the weakest, most pathetic state a human can reach, a nameless shade in the dark. The giants and the ghosts share a name. I told you to tuck away that phrase from Genesis. The men of the name, the ones who live to be unforgettable. And here, in the very vocabulary the Bible uses, the word for those mighty men quietly doubles as the word for the forgotten dead. The hunger to make a name, traced all the way to its end, lands you in the one place where no one has a name at all. And this one is heavy, so stay with me for a second. What does this mean for you right now? The men who reached hardest for a name became the word for the people no one remembers. And you live in a world that tells you, constantly, that the answer to your fear of being forgotten is to get bigger. More followers, more proof, more monuments, a name loud enough to drown out the silence. The Bible just put two words on top of each other and quietly asked whether that math actually works, whether the chase for a name to outlast you might be the exact thing that turns you into a shade. I am not going to preach at you about it. I am just going to leave those two meanings sitting next to each other, the giant and the ghost, the same 5 letters, and let you decide what they are saying to the part of you that is afraid of being small. Now the thread snaps tight, and the case starts to close in on one specific city. We move into the book of Joshua. Israel is finally in the land, and the conquest is underway. And in chapter 11, the text circles back to the giants on purpose, like it is closing a loop you have been waiting on since the spies came home pale in numbers. It says Joshua came and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from all those southern cities the spies had been so terrified of. And the text says it plainly. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel. The grasshopper giants, gone. The long-necked men who made an entire generation feel like insects, wiped out of the heartland. And if the verse stopped there, this video would be over, and the giant bloodline would be a closed chapter. But it does not stop there. It adds one more sentence, and this sentence is the entire reason Goliath exists. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod, the text says, did some remain. 3 cities. Read those names because you know them, or you will. Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod were Philistine cities. The Philistines were Israel's great coastal rivals, and 3 of their strongholds are now named as the exact places where the last of the giant bloodline survived. This is the payoff of the breadcrumb trail. Remember the detective's note from Numbers, the one I told you to file away. The giants cluster. They concentrate in specific places, And now the Bible tells you precisely which places the bloodline retreated into when it was driven out of everywhere else. It went to the coast, to Philistia, to, among other cities, a place called Gath. Say that name again. Gath. Because in a few centuries, on a morning in the valley of Elah, a man is going to walk down into that valley in bronze armor and scream a dare at the army of Israel. And when the text introduces him, it gives him a title that, after everything we have just traced, should land like a thunderclap. It calls him Goliath of Gath. The bloodline did not die in the flood. It did not die under Joshua. It survived in a handful of fortified coastal cities, exactly where the text said it would. And it has been waiting quietly in the background of the story for the right moment to walk back onto the stage. That right moment is almost here, and the boy who is going to meet it has not even been born yet. He is generations away, a future shepherd in a town called Bethlehem, the youngest of his brothers, the one nobody thinks to call in from the field. He has no idea that the bloodline of the fallen ones is sitting in a city called Gath, sharpening its spears with his name on it. Centuries have passed. There is a king in Israel now, a tall, handsome, deeply insecure man named Saul, and his army is pinned down in the valley of Elah, staring across a dry stream bed at the Philistines. And out of the Philistine ranks walks the bloodline. 1 Samuel chapter 17. And the text introduces him the way it would introduce the final boss. There came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath. Of Gath, one of the 3 cities. We have been chasing this man since Genesis, and he finally has a face. And before he even speaks, the dirt has something to say about him too. For a long time, Gath was just a name in the text, a Philistine city that may or may not have really existed. Then archaeologists found it. It is a site in central Israel called Tel Es-Safi, and when they started digging, they uncovered one of the largest cities of its entire era. A Philistine superpower with fortifications and a scale of construction that dwarfed the towns around it. Exactly the kind of place that would breed a warrior caste and a champion. But they found something more specific than big walls. In the layers dating to roughly the time of David, the excavators pulled out a broken piece of pottery with letters scratched into it, some of the earliest alphabetic writing ever found in that part of the world. And on that shard were 2 names. In the original, they look like Alut and Walt. Names that linguists recognized immediately because they are the same kind of name as Goliath. Not Hebrew names, foreign names. The type the Philistines carried with them from across the sea, with the same root and the same shape as the name in 1 Samuel. Now, stay honest with me, because this matters. That broken pot does not say Goliath. It is not his signature. It does not prove the duel happened. What it proves is quieter, and in a way better. It proves that a name like Goliath was a real, ordinary Philistine name in use in the real city of Gath at roughly the real time the Bible says. The story is not floating somewhere in mythology. It is bolted to a specific city you can walk through today, where people really were named things like Goliath. The case file keeps getting more solid the deeper anyone digs, literally. And now the text reaches for the tape measure, because of course it does. This is the same Bible that gave us the dimensions of Og's bed. It tells us his height. And here is where you, the careful viewer, get to watch the ancient texts preserve a genuine question right out in the open. The standard Hebrew text, the one most of your Bibles are translated from, says Goliath stood 6 cubits and a span. Do that math, and you get something around 9 feet 9 inches tall. A human skyscraper. A man who would have to duck through a 2-story doorway. But here is the wrinkle, and I am showing it to you because hiding it would be the opposite of what this channel is about. The oldest manuscripts do not all agree. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the ancient texts found in caves near the Dead Sea, there is a copy of Samuel, and it does not say 6 cubits. It says 4 cubits and a span. The ancient Greek translation says the same. So does the 1st century historian Josephus. 4 cubits and a span comes out to roughly 6 feet 9 inches. And this is fascinating either way. 6'9" does not sound like much to a basketball fan today, but drop it into a world where the average man was around 5'2" or 5'3", and a 6'9" warrior in full bronze armor is a literal head and shoulders taller than every soldier on the field, a walking wall. Either reading gives you a giant. The texts just preserve a question about exactly how giant, and I am not going to flatten that question for you. I am going to let you see it, the way the manuscripts actually leave it, and let you sit in the genuine mystery of it. Whatever his exact height, the text is relentless about his gear because the gear is the point. A bronze helmet, a coat of scale armor weighing 5,000 shekels of bronze, which lands somewhere around 125 pounds of metal hanging on one man's body. Bronze guards on his legs, a bronze javelin slung across his back, and a spear, the text says, whose shaft was like a weaver's beam, with an iron head weighing 600 shekels, around 15 pounds of iron on the tip alone, and in front of him walked a man whose entire job was to carry his shield. The giant was so loaded with metal he needed a second man just for the shield. Quick pause here, because if you have come this far with me, you are exactly who this channel is built for. You did not come for a cartoon version of these stories. You came for what is actually buried in the original text, the stuff that gets sanded off in translation. If that is you, subscribe, so you are in the room the next time we pull a thread like this one loose. Now, back to the giant. And then he opens his mouth. For 40 days, morning and evening, he walks into the valley and shouts the same thing. And listen to the grammar of his taunt, because it gives him away. Choose a man for yourselves, he says, and let him come down to me. Give me a man, that we may fight together. I this day defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man, choose someone for me, hear it. The whole speech orbits around himself. He is, in the most literal sense we set up at the very beginning, a man of the name, a man demanding that a name be put up against his. The Nephilim were the men of the name. Babel said, "Let us make a name." And here is the bloodline's last famous son standing in a valley screaming for someone to make him a name by dying on his spear. For 40 days, nobody answers, because everybody in that valley is doing the grasshopper math from numbers all over again. They look at the giant, then they look at themselves, and they decide the ending in advance. And then a kid shows up with cheese for his brothers. You know the broad strokes. The youngest son of a man from Bethlehem, sent by his father to bring food to his older brothers on the front line. He hears the giant, and where every trained soldier hears a death sentence, this kid hears something else. He hears a man insulting a name that is not Goliath's to insult. And when he finally stands in that valley, with no armor, having turned down the king's own gear because it does not fit him, the giant looks at him and is offended. He is a boy, ruddy, handsome, holding a shepherd's staff. The giant curses him and promises to feed him to the birds. And the kid answers with the single most important sentence in this entire video. He says, "You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts." In the name, Beshem, there it is. The whole story, every thread we have pulled since Genesis, lands on that one preposition. The giant came in his own name, the name he had spent his life building, the name his whole bloodline existed to make. And the kid came in a name he did not build, a name that was given to him, a name bigger than himself, that he was simply choosing to stand inside. That is the actual contest in the Valley of Elah. It was never 6 cubits against 5 feet. It was a man fighting for his own name against a boy fighting in a borrowed one. And we all know which one is lying in the dirt at the end of the chapter. And here is the heart of it. What does this mean for you? Right now. The giant in front of you is loud about itself. That is how you recognize it. The thing that has you frozen, the fear, the rival, the failure you cannot stop replaying. It talks the way Goliath talked. I. It is huge, and it is sure of itself, and it has been walking into your valley every morning and every evening for longer than you want to admit. And the question the kid forces on you is not, are you big enough? You are not. Neither was he. The question is, whose name you walk in. What is the thing bigger than yourself that you are choosing to stand inside when you walk down into the dry stream bed? Because the kid did not beat the giant by becoming a bigger giant. He beat it by refusing to make the fight about his own size at all. Hold that, because we are about to find out it was not even the last giant he had to face. And here is a detail from that valley that almost everyone reads straight past, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Go back to the moment before the fight. The kid bends down at the brook to choose his ammunition, and the text stops to count. He picked up 5 smooth stones. 5. Now ask yourself the obvious question. If your faith is strong enough to walk up to a 9-foot giant with a sling, why grab 5 stones? You only need 1. People have asked that for a very long time, and the most haunting answer is sitting in the passage we are about to read. Because Goliath, it turns out, was not alone in that bloodline. He had brothers, 4 of them, and a lot of readers have looked at that kid, picking up exactly 5 smooth stones, 1 for the giant in front of him and 1 for each of the 4 giants who might come next, and concluded that David walked into that valley already knowing the truth this whole video has been building toward. That the giant you can see is rarely the only giant. That a bloodline does not end with one body in the dirt. He came prepared for the family. We do not know for certain that is why he took 5. The text does not spell it out, but hold the image because it is about to become literal. 1 stone dropped Goliath, and the other 4. The Bible spends a forgotten little passage at the back of 2 Samuel telling you exactly who the other 4 stones were for. Here is the part of the story that got left on the cutting room floor, the part the Sunday school flannel graph never had a board for. Goliath was not the end of the bloodline. He had brothers, and the Bible names them. Flip ahead, past the famous duel, past David becoming king, all the way to the back of the Book of 2 Samuel chapter 21. And there is a passage there, repeated again over in 1 Chronicles chapter 20, that almost nobody preaches, because it does not fit the neat ending. It is a short, brutal list of 4 more giants. And the text gives them a family. It says over and over that each of these 4 was born to Ha-Rapha in Gath. Ha-Rapha, the same root as Rephaim, the giant clans, the word that also means the shades of the dead. The text is telling you in its own vocabulary that these are the last of the bloodline we have been tracking since Og of Bashan. And it tells you again where they live. Gath, the same city, Goliath's city, one of the 3. Let's meet them, because each one carries a detail that hits. The first is named Ishbi-Benob, and his story is the one that should genuinely scare you a little. By this point, David is not a kid in a valley anymore. He is an old king, tired. The text says he grew weary in battle, and Ishbi-Benob, a descendant of the giant, with a bronze spearhead weighing 300 shekels, decides this is his moment. He moves to kill David, and David, the giant killer, the legend, cannot do it. He is too old, too spent. The man who once dropped Goliath is about to be killed by Goliath's relative in the dirt, the great story collapsing into a sad footnote. And then a soldier named Abishai gets there in time, one of David's men, not a household name. He cuts the giant down and saves the king's life, and the soldiers, shaken, make David swear an oath. You will not go out to battle with us anymore, they tell him, so that you do not quench the lamp of Israel. The lamp of Israel, that is what they call him now. A flame they almost watched go out to a giant. The bloodline got a rematch. It waited until David was weak, and it almost won. The giant you beat when you were young does not always stay beaten. It just waits for you to get tired. The second giant is named Saph, also written as Sippai. He falls in a battle at a place called Gob, cut down by another of David's men, a soldier named Sibbecai. One more son of the bloodline, one more name you have never heard, one more unnamed hero taking him down. The third is where the detective in you has to lean in, because there is a real textual knot here, and I am going to show it to you straight instead of pretending it is simple. In 2 Samuel, the text says a man named Elhanan killed Goliath the Gittite, the one whose spear shaft was like a weaver's beam. And you might be thinking, wait, did not David kill Goliath? So how does another man kill him again? It is a fair question, and people have wrestled with it for a very long time, and the parallel passage over in 1 Chronicles seems to answer it. Chronicles says Elhanan killed Lahmi, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, whose spear was like a weaver's beam, the brother of Goliath, Lahmi. a second giant in the same family, carrying the same kind of weapon, the same weaver's beam spear, killed by the same soldier. The likeliest reading is that a copyist's slip in Samuel dropped the words, "the brother of," and Chronicles preserves the fuller line. Either way, what the text gives us is unmistakable. Goliath had a brother named Lami, just as big, just as armed, and he fell too. And then the fourth. And the fourth is the one you do not forget. The text describes a man of great stature, a giant in Gath, and it pauses to count his fingers and toes. 6 fingers on each hand, it says. 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. And he too was descended from Rephaim. He stood and defied Israel, the same word, the same arrogance Goliath had, the bloodline doing the only thing it knew how to do, demanding a name. And he was struck down by a man named Jonathan, the son of David's brother, David's own nephew, a kid from the next generation finishing what his uncle started. And then the passage closes with one sentence that, after everything we have traced, is the whole point of this video crystallized. These 4, the text says, were descended from Rephaim in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Read that last part again. They fell by the hand of David and his servants, not by the hand of David, by the hand of David and his servants. The giants of the bloodline, the men obsessed with their own name since before the flood, were not taken down by a single legendary hero standing alone in a valley. They were taken down by a team, by David, yes, and by Abishai, and Sibbecai, and Elhanan, and Jonathan. Soldiers most people could not name if you offered them money. The men with no fame of their own brought down the men who lived for nothing else. And notice the word the text keeps using for the giants. They fell. They fell. Naphal. The same root as Nephilim, the fallen ones, all the way back in Genesis. The men whose very name means the ones who fall, fall. The bloodline ends exactly the way its name predicted at the very beginning of the story. And this one is for everybody. What does this mean for you right now? Your giant has brothers too. I think that is one of the quietly truest things in this whole passage. We tell the story of David and Goliath like the giant goes down once and the credits roll. But the real text knows better. The thing you beat comes back. It waits until you are tired, like Ishbi-Benob did, and it shows up wearing a slightly different face, with the same weaver's beam spear, demanding the same thing it always demanded. The fear you thought you conquered in your 20s knocks again in your 40s. The pattern you broke shows up in your kid. And here is the mercy buried in that hard truth. You were never meant to fight the whole bloodline alone. David did not. The lamp of Israel almost went out precisely in the one moment he was out there by himself, weary, no Abishai in reach. The giants fell to a we, not a me. So if you are staring down the brother of a giant you thought you already beat, the question is not, why am I not strong enough to do this alone? You are not supposed to. Nobody in this story was. So let's pull every thread together, because they all tie off in the same knot, and it is a beautiful one. Go back to the very beginning. Before the flood, the Bible introduces the Nephilim, the fallen ones, and calls them the men of the name, the Anshe Hashem, beings whose entire existence was bent toward making a name that would not be forgotten. And a few chapters later, all of humanity says the quiet part out loud at the Tower of Babel. Come, they say, let us make a name for ourselves. Let us build something so high we cannot possibly be forgotten. And that tower comes down and the people are scattered, and the name they tried to seize for themselves slips through their fingers. Then the bloodline of giants, the Rephaim, the mighty men, march through 1,000 years of the story. Og and his iron bed, the Anakim who turned an army into grasshoppers, and the Bible, in its own vocabulary, quietly files them under a word that doubles as the name for the forgotten dead. The men of the name become the shades with no name at all. And then it all funnels down into one valley and one giant from Gath, screaming for a man to make him famous. I give me a name to break. And a kid walks down with no armor and says, I am not here in my name. I am here in a name that was given to me. Here is the irony that I cannot get over, and I want to leave you holding it. We remember the giants' names, we remember Goliath, we even remember Lami and Ishbi-Benob if we go looking, and we remember them for one reason, because of the kid who refused to fight for a name of his own. The men who spent everything chasing a name to outlast them are remembered, in the end, only as the things that got defeated by the boy who was not chasing one. The fallen ones fell, and the name we still say 3,000 years later belongs to the shepherd who said the fight was never about him. That is the argument the Bible is making very quietly, underneath the giants and the bronze and the sling. This is not an argument against greatness. The Bible is making a specific, almost uncomfortable case. The people who organize their whole lives around making their own name big, by force, tend to become a cautionary word. And the people who carry a name bigger than themselves, who are willing to be the unnamed servant, the Abishai, the kid with the cheese, those are the ones the story cannot let go of. The giants got the height, the shepherd got the legacy, and those turned out to be very different things. So here is the last place I want to leave you, and then I will let you go. What does this mean for you right now? You have giants. Some of them you inherited, like David inherited a bloodline that had been terrorizing his people since before anyone could remember. You did not create the thing that looms over you. You just got handed the valley, and you are standing in front of it doing the same two calculations everyone in this story did. The grasshopper one, where you measure the giant, measure yourself, and decide the ending in the mirror before the fight even starts. And the other one, the name one. Whether you are going to spend your one life trying to build a name big enough to drown out the fear of being forgotten, the way the fallen ones did, or whether there is a name bigger than yours that you could simply choose to stand inside. The whole Bible just told you how both of those calculations end. The grasshoppers stayed grasshoppers. The men of the name became the word for the dead. And the kid who refused to play either game is the one we are still talking about tonight, at whatever hour you are watching this. That is not a sermon. That is just the math of the story. What you do with it is yours. So here is where we actually landed. The Nephilim were never just monster movie giants. They were the fallen ones, the men of the name, and the Bible tracked their bloodline like a cold case from before the flood, through Og's iron bed, into 3 Philistine cities, down to a giant in the valley of Elah, and finally to 4 brothers in Gath that almost nobody ever talks about. And underneath all of it was one quiet question about names. The kind you grab, and the kind you are given. If this is the way you like the Bible done, slow, in the original language, with the parts that get skipped put back in, then there is one more thread I think you need to see next. The kid in this story turned down a king's armor and won, and that single decision rewires almost everything people assume about David. The video breaking that down is right here on the screen. Go pull that thread with me.